The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome into the Coach Bill Clark Show, presented by Buffalo Rock Dr. Pepper. Landry Roberts, Molly Robinson, I'm Pat. That's Coach. Coach, did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. A lot of ball.
A lot of ball. All right, let's start with down on the plains of Auburn. Auburn takes out South Alabama. We kind of previewed it last week on this show. A tough opponent. South Alabama, a really good group of 5 team.
Yeah, I've been impressed with those guys. I think just getting to watch that game as we watched all the others, just to see, how they mix their running past tons of RPOs. I think Auburn, we discussed this on the show Monday, thought they were going to put them away. I think they thought they were. Give South Alabama credit. I was a little confused at the end of the game when they were really taking so much time, even though I think they were trying to take what was given to them. Little confusion there, but give them credit for fighting hard. I think Auburn was solid. I do think we were all kind of thinking they were just going to really step on the throat there, and they didn't. But still, very solid first 3 games.
How tough is that for Hugh Freeze and his staff, knowing the big one that you have coming up this weekend, the SEC schedule that looms so large? How tough is that, especially for an earlier in the afternoon game? Yeah,
I think it's a thing. I think it's a thing that I know what's ahead. I want to just win this game and get on to the next one, but they need to play well. They need to play well going in. They have a lot of questions still unanswered, just we all would, and I think the thing that happened for anybody that's playing them now, if they're smart, and I think that's what we've seen, they're not overlooking anybody. I just think we know what's coming up. So you're looking for all those things, as we talk about rarefied air, that they've got to play in. But I've been impressed. I think they've played very well, solid. We'll see. We'll see Saturday.
You've discussed this before on the show. When you look at a schedule and the way that you used to tackle things on your schedule, when, let's just be honest, you're playing a lesser opponent, and then you've got one coming up down the road in regards to conference play, how you approach that. Kind of take us back in that mindset of, when did all of those analysts at Auburn, when did Coach Hugh Freeze, his coaches, when did they start taking peeks at Oklahoma?
Yeah, that's a summer thing. You're looking ahead to them all summer. You've got people, they've got so many people that are breaking people down ahead of the game. They've lost games that they weren't supposed to lose, as we know, and it really changes you. I think some of these where we can look ahead, I would think that was minimalized, by the fact that they've been upset before, but they've had a group looking at them, and specific to that game, that's a game they looked at all summer as much as they could, but it's all going to be new. They got new people, so some of that gets thrown out, but they have definitely looked at them in the summer.
From a psychological standpoint, how big is it for Auburn to have gone on the road to open up their season?
Yeah.
Granted, not as many folks as you're going to see there in Norman, Oklahoma, but you go to Baylor, hostile crowd, you win that football game. Is that sometimes understated how big that can be, especially for a team like this early in the season?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think to those points, on the road, hostile environment, had to overcome just adversity that, and to travel with a good crowd. Maybe the next step up with Oklahoma might be another step up, but it's going to be close. It's going to be similar. Even there, just the area of the country they were going in. So I think that helps them a whole lot. Now, opponents are opponents, but just those little things that you want to do to make you feel more comfortable. Hey, guys, we've been in this environment. It's going to be loud. You thought it was going to be loud. This is what loud looked like the first game. Here it goes again. So, yeah, definitely.
I know probably his position coach, he would handle that communication with Jackson Arnold about going back to Norman, Oklahoma for the first time. But as a head coach, do you think that Hugh Freeze is having maybe even just a tongue-in-cheek conversation with Jackson Arnold, just trying to make sure that he understands that, I know there's going to be some emotions involved by going back to your old place, but do you have that conversation?
Yeah, once again, I think they talked about it in the summer. You're looking to this. It's going to be a big game to him. This is one of those, I'm trying to decide, who is he? Does he like that pressure? Does that hype him up to the point that he perform? Whatever makes him perform better. Some guys love that. They love to have the enemy, the person they're playing against. Others, hey, let's keep him calm. Hey, it's just another game. Whatever that is, they've been studying him, and they've been planning around what gets him the most ready, and that's what they're trying to play off of.
How much of last year's film are you utilizing? Because you got new personnel, you got new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, and John Mateer. I know we're going to talk about him, but on the defensive side of the ball, but the things that you're running offensively, some of the same concepts, but you got different personnel there for Auburn.
Yeah, I think you're going to look at what they did defensively to you. I was so much about what they're doing now. I didn't go back a lot. But if we were running similar schemes, there's always going to be some carryover. Mine was, what's the historical concept of this coach? Is he a fourth down, go for it guy? Where is that at? What has he done historically? Going for two, fake punts. Anything that I can get a history of, maybe not just for me, but just who is this guy that's calling the plays? Oh, it's the head coach now defensively. Who is Coach Venables as a play caller versus the guy he's got now that's at West Virginia, the guy he had that's at West Virginia. So those are the things that you're looking for. You're trying to get history, background, maybe just because they're Auburn's. I think Auburn's going to have a lot of similarities because they're an RPO team. There's going to be some things I will want to see from that last year's game.
A little bit later in the program, we're going to break down and let Coach kind of diagram and tell us what he anticipates and what he sees from this Oklahoma offense and Brent Venables' defense going up against Auburn. Let's talk about Alabama. Last 2 weeks, I've been using the term a palate cleanser for the Tide the last 2 weeks. Ty Simpson looked like a completely different quarterback than what he looked down in Tallahassee. Thrown for over 600 yards, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. What have you seen the last 2 weeks from Alabama's offense, especially Ty Simpson?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, on air, to have that kind of percentage to throw it that well, catch the ball. I mean, you don't just throw it. Somebody's got to catch it on the other side, protection. I think that part of their game has been really, really good. I think we thought it was Monroe, and now we're going, wait a second, this guy's is very accurate. Those were the things we were hearing about him in the summer. So what were the things in the first game that caused him to be a little bit off or whatever? Give Florida State credit, the crowd, etc., lack of running game. There's a lot of things that went into that, but he's been very accurate. I think offensively, and we talked about this on the show Monday, everything they're doing is really good. Running game is the question we would probably all have. When does somebody start treating you as a pass team? And when I treat you either way, I put one less guy in the box and one more guy back or whatever that is, that's when you get a little more one-dimensional. I don't think they're one-dimensional because they are trying to run the ball, but you're not seeing it as much. And so that's going to be the question moving it forward.
Well, and my question, it kind of rolls into that. Next week, a team, Georgia, that's really good against the run.
Yeah.
How much is Alabama going to have to depend on that running game? Because you're going to have to make them respect it, right? Yeah. Otherwise, Ty Simpson might have a long day.
Well, what you're going to see out of Georgia is too high safety. I mean, I think that was who I wanted to be. Finding ways to keep two guys high and then stealing him down when you can, but being able to play from back, which is better for the pass game. Now, if we were talking about Georgia, we'd say, well, they got lit up anyway early on. But I think that's the question. Can I take your run game away and still keep two high safeties? And if they can do that, and that's when I say when you have one thing you just cannot do, and I can go cheat, I can go add a guy in the secondary where I don't have to go get down to a one high safety to get another guy in the box. I think that's what's going to happen. Just like if we talked about Auburn when they say, I'm going to treat him as a running quarterback, make him throw the ball to beat me, and I've got good enough guys on the outside who can defend in one-on-one situations, and now you're going to get a one high safety a lot of the times. Again, so there's the Auburn standpoint versus Alabama, who is turning more into a throw team maybe. I don't know. That's we're about to see.
In regards to the mental makeup of the Alabama football team, playing those two games like they did, the confidence level now, you're going up against Georgia. Yeah. You're not playing Wisconsin. You're not playing La Monroe. But just from a mental aspect, how big was the last 2 weeks for them?
Yeah, I think it was huge. I think also getting an open date before Georgia is a big help. You're going to get another week on them. That's a big deal. Obviously, recovery is always factored in, but the amount of time you get to spend on those guys and focus on them, knowing it's a huge game, and really every nuance, is there somebody giving something away by how their stance is or whatever, you're going to know it with an open date.
How much are you working on Georgia with your team? Are you working on just a lot of your same stuff this first week and then game week? Are we turning more of the attention towards Georgia? But does it change with a specific opponent like a Georgia team that's really, really good?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think personally, and that's all you can go on is what fits you. But when it's Georgia, and this is what I found out almost invariably, unless we just lucked into some or was scheduled a team that we should beat, I am working on that opponent. This trying to spread it out. I'm going to work Tuesday on somebody, Wednesday on somebody, Thursday. Now, if I knew that was a team I should beat, yes, I've done that a few times. But generally, I'm working on that next opponent. I really want to, I want to play great coming out of an open date. I want to play, I want to do all the right things, to keep the season going, whatever that is. But when it's Georgia, it's all Georgia, to that question.
Smart Bank, proud sponsor of this program. I know you know those guys extremely well. You're on the board at Smart Bank.
Yeah, I think, and I keep saying this over and over, but this is what we're hearing as Smart Bank grows, and that's what we hear in these board meetings. They're growing because of relationships. They're growing because people are leaving other banks because they want that small town feel of what you get when you go into Smart Bank, and they know who you are and they care about you.
As we continue our preview of the Oklahoma-Auburn game coming up this weekend in Norman, Oklahoma, time for a little Coach film session. If you're watching us on YouTube, it's going to be a great segment because, Coach, when you look at this Oklahoma offense, very productive with John Mateer.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to start out with a little 2-point play here just for fun. I think just for people to understand as we look at this and what happens as you go into a 2-point play. These are the things for me I wanted to work on. Every day when we kick PAT and field goal, we would hit 2-point plays. What is that important? I mean, that's going to be a play throughout the game at some point you need, or maybe it's 4th and 3. It's 4th and 4 down on the goal line. So, we put a little wildcat action in there and hit the wing as he comes across. All right, let's go to the next play. Let's talk about Mateer. I think the one thing that impressed you in that Michigan game is just what a great athlete he is. I think Landrum off air was questioning why make that throw, when you jump. But I think the thing for me is exciting about him is what a great runner he is. The question as we go in the comparison between him and Jackson Arnold is two really good runners and who throws the ball better. So great feet, moves around in the pocket. Don't know why he really jumped there, but good throw. All right, let's talk about physical run game, outside zone, captures the edge. Great physical finish, and that's what you're looking for out of a running back. Run behind your pads, especially on the goal line. Great ball security. I mean, we could sit here and talk about Eagle Claw all day if we see how our running back's holding the ball here. So good protection. I'm not going to spend a lot more time on that. I think it's just exciting to see how they use him. They ran the ball so much with him against Michigan. Of course, the question I always say is, can he survive? Can he continue to run week after week? All right, let's go to the last clip, talk a little bit about defense. I think listening to what they're talking about with Brent Venables, he is now the defensive coordinator. He's not counting on anybody else to do it. He's running scout team quarterback. There's a thing for, I heard him talk about throwing the ball to certain spots. He wants to see who's defending what. So let's look at the defense right here. We talk about swarm. 11 hats to the ball. Of course, you've got a responsibility first. I've got deep first. This is going to be a great story of also his defense with Brent Venables. We've seen him do some really funky stuff. We talked about Tennessee with the 3-1 box, making them beat him running the ball. I think as we talk about Auburn, can they beat somebody throwing the ball? If the box starts getting packed out of somebody who really knows what they're doing defensively.
We did an interview in Oklahoma City earlier this week on the show, and they told us that they believe that this is the best defensive line. What was it, 20 years, Landrum? Is that what they said?
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah,
That's
20 years.
for that program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you see these Brent Venable defenses the last couple of years, I mean, what jumps out at you in regards to what he was doing at Clemson and what he's doing in Norman?
Yeah, so first I know Coach Venables. This was a guy that I would like to watch, and we had our 3 top 10 finishes and a 15th finish defensively and brag on us a little bit. But it was funny. I would get a text from one of the guys from Clemson saying, we're watching you guys right now. I would do the same. So this was a guy I loved to watch and study.
Why, Coach?
Just because we believe the same way. I thought his guys played really hard. They were very multiple. They liked to play man coverage. But multiplicity in of itself, we'd all love to give a million different things, but doing it and still having the fundamentals, playing hard, getting off blocks, tackling, and doing it at a real high level for a long time. I loved his background, having been with Bob Stoops. Bob was a guy I used to hang out with when he was at Florida. really who got me playing press coverage in the 90s when nobody was really playing. It got me that, and that's his tree. So there was that similarities. I've just always loved watching his teams play and like the multiplicity as well. He spoke at my clinic in February of my first year out. I had a Nike clinic, spoke at. So really just always been impressed with him. Also as a person, really like him.
In regards to how you would classify him as a DC, now back in the old days, we always knew when you saw Joe Lee Dunn, what you were getting because of his aggressiveness, bringing the blitzes. What about Venables? Like what is, I guess, his calling card, so to speak?
I would kind of say it was the same as mine, which would be multiplicity. And that sounds like, what does that mean? That means each week you're going to get something a little bit different. Now, I think for him, it's a lot of blitz path, but I think being on the cutting edge, saving things based on the opponent, playing really good in the big games, his guys playing really, really hard. I mean, that's a thing, if just how hard you can get your guys to play, especially knowing he was at a school that, even though I know Dabo believes in defense and running the ball and all the things, I think to be that defensive coordinator and having all that on you and then to see it time after time and time again says a lot about him.
There's always things that I know you coaches, you hold back going into certain games. Auburn has already been tested with the game at Baylor, but something just tells me, Coach, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I guess you'd have to talk to Hugh Freeze and the staff to know for sure. Something tells me that they have been holding some things back prior to getting into conference play, offensively anyways.
Yeah.
And what they're doing and some of their tendencies with what you've seen so far with Jackson Arnold. Can you see that being a possibility? And what are some different maybe variations that OU defense could face with Auburn's offense that maybe we haven't seen as much of here in the early season?
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. They've tried to save something, if not a lot. One, you're trying to fit what they do. Two, you're thinking, I can beat South Alabama with execution. That doesn't mean it's not things that are good, not things that work. It's more along the lines of I'm going to use execution to beat them, and I'm going to save FIB formations where we're going to run a lot of FIB or whatever that is that we're going to make our calling card for this game. That's what you try and save. You use the execution to beat the teams that you're better than, to save your funky stuff for the Oklahomas of the world.
Web Concrete, a great sponsor of this program. I know you guys go way back, and I know their sponsorship of this program is important.
Yeah, I was just talking to my son today about, they've got a lot of customers that think a lot of how they do business, which I think is important with all the folks that we deal with on our show. It's people that tell you something and they do it and they follow up. They've got great, their materials are good and first class, but Phil Webb does things the right way.
Coach, we have a small body of work already in regards to college football, and I'm just curious. We haven't asked you the first few weeks of the season, but want to ask you today, if you had a vote and you were ranking your top 10, what would it look like?
Yeah, I'm going to be, and I think early on I'm going to be very similar probably to what you would see out there. Difference for me, I don't have Illinois in the top 10. I've got Oklahoma at 10. I've got Texas A&M at 9.
That goes back because you have a problem with Brett Bielema.
That is true. I think that's been well established.
Shirtless on a cruise ship.
Yeah, that did it for me.
That's all of us, Coach.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we don't need to see. That's one of.
Yes,
it's enough ugly out there. We don't need any more.
All right, so you wouldn't have Illinois in the top 10.
Yeah, so I think all the rest are very similar to probably what we'd all have: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Texas. The question is Texas. They could be close to being dropped out of there based on what I've seen, but we'll give them the credit now. FSU is at 7, but could be higher. Oregon at 6. Georgia, Tennessee should be in there, but they're not, right? They're not. They didn't find a way to win the game. Georgia did. Number 5, Miami 4, who I've been impressed with. LSU, even if their coach got mad at the reporters, we talked about
Can't
money.
Run the ball, Coach. Can't run the ball.
That's right. Penn State and Ohio State.
Oh,
how good is Texas? So it's just a small body of work as we move forward, but I'm pretty much in line with them. I just have Illinois out.
I want to go back to Texas in regards to Arch Manning. Our teammate on 3-man front, Conrad Van Order, says that he believes that Arch Manning is the worst quarterback in this conference as of this moment. When you've seen the clips and you've watched Texas, have you been able to pick anything out in particular? What's going on with Arch? Why is he not having the success that we all thought he would have?
I think the accuracy is the question. I mean, I've said this many times. It's shocking how inaccurate he's been. And then I think we see the glimpses of him. But that's happened with a lot of quarterbacks through the years where he's got all the tools And for whatever reason, he's not as accurate as he should be. And I don't understand it. I mean, I really don't. I don't understand with the coaching he's been given, with the bloodlines, with the ability he's got. And I think that's why people said, is this guy hurt? Because he's missing easy throw after easy throw, not making great decisions, and it's shocking, really. They
got an elite defense, but there's just, I can't think, especially this day in college football, if you don't have an elite quarterback and playing at a high level,
right,
you're not winning a championship.
You're not and what's happening, I said this years ago, when you start designing your whole offense around the quarterback, it's designed on him making all these reads. Now, granted, they're talking to you in the headset. So if I just said 101 right here, what would I do? And I would give our fans something right here, our viewers, I should say. It's all in the disguise now. And see, that's what people are starting to learn. I'm getting somebody talking in my ear, do this, do this, do this. So the disguise from the defense, the better that disguise is now, you force that quarterback to make decisions on their own. And I think that's what's happening when you see that and you go, why is this guy making – well, give the defense credit. They're lying to him. They're giving him different looks. I thought Patricia did a great job the first game, but he's missing throws that he should be making. And that's the question I have. And that's why the question about his injury was a legitimate one, because people are like, you're missing throws you should be making.
Well, it was not a quarterback clinic in Baton Rouge on Saturday night. You had Nussmeier throws an interception. You've got Lagway throwing 5 interceptions. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing from those two guys in regards to the frustration with Florida? And then, of course, Garrett Nussmeier not having the Heisman-like season we all thought he would have.
Yeah, so I got to say this, and I probably, defenses have to be given credit when they're really good defenses. And once again, the really good guys know how to disguise. I think Baker, he was at La Tech when we played them. I know him. He's a really good coach. Give him a lot of credit. But, you got to put a lot of that on the quarterback. And, and I was talking, once again, go back to Clemson. Quarterback-centric offenses. But you've also got to give them some things around them, like a run game. If you don't do that, it really falls all on them. So
that's kind of the problem with LSU, because of the fact that they're not running the ball effectively. That does not open up Nussmeier to do other things. That's
right, and that's why I always talk about balance. And I talk about a guy that I know well, that a lot of these guys, let's look at Tennessee, who really, this is an Art Briles system. And if I talk about defense, I'm going to have a lot to say because I was really involved. But the guys that get it know there's 2 things you're going to do. You're going to throw it every down, Mike Leach, with some run game, but even that game, I've got to give screen game to. I've got to be able to play quick screens, slow screens. I got to slow that rush down. If I'm not going to run the ball, I'm great at getting the ball out. Okay, Clemson was not doing that. You've got to help that quarterback in other ways, but if you can run the ball, and that, Art Briles used to tell me all the time, we're going to run for more than we throw. We're going to be great at running the ball, and then we're going to get these one-on-one matchups. When we do make that throw, what's one-on-one, and you got a good receiver out there, it's going to make that quarterback look a lot smarter, as we talked about with Jack. So he's got to get help. You got to give him help with run game, with other things that make them better and more successful.
At this point in the season, we're talking about LSU or Alabama. How much better can that run game get? I mean, seriously, how much better can a run game get? We're now 3 games in.
Right. Well, Alabama's got a guy that's missing. Right. We do know they've got a guy that's missing. It's to me, it's such a mindset. And if they're packing the box, of course. Yeah, I mean, I can put enough guys in there with all things even. I can take your run game away. We should be killing you on the outside. But if they're able to keep 2 high safety and I've got to be able to run the ball. And that's where we talk about balance is when they want to say you can't throw the ball, we can run it. When they want to say you can't run it, we can throw it. Or those times when I've got to throw it and they know it, and I got to run it and they know it. That's why balance is so important, because you're going to need all of it. And sometimes we're going to be better at certain things than others. But the more I become one-dimensional, or they become one-dimensional for me defensively, the better I'm going to be at stopping them.
I was going to ask you about Ryan Williams. So this year, Alabama is lining him up more in the slot, whereas most of the time last year he didn't play in that position. So as a defensive coordinator, and if Alabama ends up moving him around a little bit more, tell us how you attack that defensively, or how Kirby will try to do that next Saturday.
Yeah, so in theory, he's a really good slot receiver because those guys are hard to defend in the slot. You can motion them. They're off the ball. They're closer to the ball. There's a lot of different ways to get. Now, that's a whole different mindset as far as running routes, taking hits. Those guys know how to catch the ball and get down, and I've been an outside receiver. I mean, that's going to become a thing. But I do think if you're just trying to get a guy the ball, it's a lot easier to get it to him other than vertical shots. There's all the different ways to get it to a slot receiver versus just an outside throw, which now he's really good at those. But I can get it to him a lot more in the slot if he learns how to run those routes and do those things. I think he's got all the ability to do it. No doubt.
One other team we haven't mentioned, Vanderbilt. How impressed were you in their win over South Carolina?
Very, very impressed. I mean, once again, complimentary football, right? And I think that's what happens. You got a defensive coach who is smart enough to go get help with an older coach, as we've talked about with Coach Keel, and that really just that whole philosophy, that offensive philosophy that fits defenses. And that's what people don't understand. Our number one job here is to win the game. Now I got to take what I've got. Now, would I love to score 70 and give up 0? Of course. I'm going to take what I've got, what's hard to defend, what's different, and match it up with complementary football with the special teams, and that's what they're doing. Very impressive.
Pat, you know what you call that? That's a money line mindset.
Yes. I love the money line mindset.
Yeah.
That's big time. Another big time is your vehicle looks pretty clean this week. I give you credit because it hadn't rained, so he must have cleaned it.
No, it hadn't rained.
Well, I've really gone into hand washing.
Wow.
You didn't know that.
Really?
Have you really?
Not by me, but
I got you.
Your poor wife.
You can't hide
I know.
money.
She works hard.
That is.
But it is clean. Love our guys at Donahue.
Coach, just like we were talking about the top 10 just a couple of minutes ago, let's talk about the Heisman Trophy. We just named a couple of guys that were mentioned for that possibility. Arch Manning, sluggish out of the gate. So was Nussmeier at LSU. What other guys have kind of piqued your interest early part of the season?
I think you got to look at Mateer and Beck. To me, especially as we're talking about quarterbacks. Obviously, we mentioned Caleb Downs. I think that's going to be a body of work. But I think let's see what Mateer does. I've been really impressed with Beck. I mean, my gosh, this guy's been there, done that. He's going to be there if he continues to play like he is. And then Mateer is the guy that we all got excited about after the Michigan game. And let's see what he does moving forward. So I think there's a lot of work. We know Oregon's got a quarterback out there that's starting to get attention, and they're always going to get it because they've got a really good team. So I would say Mateer and Beck's right now on my top of my list.
Your opinion on Diego Pavia. Now, we talked about him briefly earlier in the show, but if Vanderbilt continues to win, and we all think they will, maybe not to the effect of making the college football playoff, but being a team that could find themselves winning 7-8.
Yeah.
Who knows? Even more games than that. Then I would think Diego Pavia, if he stays healthy, he will be in that conversation. You agree with that?
Absolutely. That was probably the
kind of the wild card.
Yeah, my gosh. What a great statement to say this guy because he's a football player. It's like, what does he do for his team? How much confidence? Like what you said about Tim Tebow. Yeah, he was a great player, but he also inspired his team. He caused them to work harder. He caused them to believe. So he performs, and it's on him, with run game, with throws. I tell you, that's what always amazes me, these throws he makes when it counts.
Oh, yeah.
I hate I left him out. Good job, because he should be up there, no doubt.
And I think if Vandy keeps winning, then you will have the national drumbeat because he's so much fun to watch. And like you said, he's a football player.
He's a football player.
Yeah, he's not a finesse guy.
That's right.
I mean, he can throw, but he can run. He's like Bo Jackson. He can do it all. Earlier this week on Three Man Front, we had an opportunity to sit down and talk to someone that's very close to you, and that's Coach Jack Crow. He's been a guest on this show in the past, a former head coach at Arkansas, former offensive coordinator at Auburn, former head coach at Jacksonville State. But he carries a role with Coach Safely, and I know you guys continue to beat the drum and do so much in regards to safety for those athletes out there.
Yeah, this was Jack. He's the founder of Coach Safely. Jimmy Andrews, who was his team doc, that was Jimmy Andrews' first team. Obviously, I was at UAB, was kind of the coach, and to see where we've gone, we got the law in 2018 and then the updated law now. Alabama first, but moving to Georgia, Louisiana, taking this thing national, all about keeping the kids safe so they'll play.
It's an incredible organization. It was a lot of fun earlier this month with Senator Tuberville and Paul Feinbaum. So go to CoachSafely.org for more information. It's been a quick 30 minutes. Appreciate you tuning in each and every week here on the Coach Bill Clark Show, presented by Buffalo Rock and, of course, Dr. Pepper. Until next time, have a great week. Keep it tuned right here to Jocks.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.